Research and Learning from Technological University Dublin, Ireland. This research project has been jointly developed by Dr. Mary Daisy and Dr. Catherine Bates from TU Dublin. This session will be presented by Dr. Mary, Head of Research and Innovation for Engagement and Impact at Technological University Dublin, showcasing innovative strategies to advance social responsibility in higher education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mary Daisy on stage. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary, and my colleague, Dr. Catherine Bates, is online. And so I'm here today to talk to you about a program that has been running for about 16 years in our higher education institution. I suppose we're all providers of education, students, graduates for employment, but, our commitment to engaging with to local communities where we have our campuses has been always really, really important to us, not just to do at a time of crisis, but also
Первый стол, у кого? Мне надо, кстати, задание для медиков. Я сейчас еще у меня дадите, у вас есть? У мамы есть, вон конверт у нее лежит. Я забираю, тогда помню сейчас для группы, они обе. А у меня...
Because it's only really since this year that our new organizational structure has bedded down, so to speak, and that that we can now kind of think ahead and see better where things like the Students Learning with Communities program, which was the significant part of the community engaged learning program, then actually would sit. So I suppose this way. Okay, so maybe I'll just use this. Okay. Sorry, to move the slide, it's not working.
Let me check.
Okay, I can do that manually as well if you like.
You start.
Can I just, with this?
Yes.
That's not working either. That better?
I think now. I think you can now.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so apologies for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to our university, also to kind of tell you a little bit more about our commitment to community engagement, present our findings from the Magna Charta research project and the evaluation that we took part in as part of that. Well, break up the presentation with 3 video snippets from our community partners, one of our students and one of our academics, and then give you a slide just on kind of program outcomes and highlights. And then because this project actually involved a significant evaluation, what worked and what didn't work, I'm also going to kind of give you some information on that and give you recommendations then as to how we think community engaged research and learning could be embedded within the university governance and structural processes so that it could be supported in the long term. So I suppose Dublin is the capital city of Ireland, which is quite a small nation, completely so relative to Bangladesh. When you look at the overall population, we're tiny. We probably would fit into one suburb of the city of Dhaka, but we are a small little nation that we're located on the western seaboard of Europe near the Atlantic Ocean. And I suppose Dublin is a city that actually, has evolved over the years, and particularly in the last 30 or 40 years into kind of an economic hub for lots of business and industry, particularly in the life sciences, the ICT sectors, and in the service sectors as well. So notwithstanding that and the fact that we have a huge increase in the number of people going to higher education now within Ireland, Dublin still does actually have a number of deprived areas. And these deprived areas tend to be located in small pockets of the city centre, and also they are located in the northern and western suburbs. And coincidentally, it's in all of these locations that our campuses are located as well. So we take it very seriously, our responsibility to actually work with our communities, particularly those that are underserved and really have no voice. So I suppose in terms of who we are as a university, we're a new university. And as our ambassador, John Davis, would actually say, it's nice to be a new and shiny university, but not everything works 100%. And it's good to kind of evaluate that. But we do have a long history of about 150 years of providing higher education in Ireland because one of the, so we came together to form a technological university in 2019, and it was 3 institutes of technology that would have actually been providing programs together in teaching and research that actually came together to form this new university. This new university, it's a new type of university system in Ireland. We did not have these technological universities in the past, unlike a lot of parts of Europe, which do have these technological universities. And a number of reports had highlighted the need for Ireland to develop a more diverse higher education system. And that would be more collaborative, that would provide greater access to higher education, particularly from people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and also to kind of upskill people in the labour force as well, not just to provide your programmes of education at entry when you leave secondary school or high school, but also to upskill those already working in industry as well. And that's how our university came into being. So notwithstanding that, our guiding principles actually, while our mission is teaching and research, engagement cuts across most of all of that, and particularly in our guiding principles. And if you look at some of those there, knowledge creation and application is really, really important for us. And also kind of giving this engaged experience where students do work with community partners. So that's quite important for us. So we're a practice-based, research-informed university and also employer-engaged, and we offer pathways of higher education from apprenticeship to higher honours degree, master's and PhD as well. So I have asked Nazia to actually share the slide deck with you. So just for your own information, you don't need to worry about reading all the content on the slides. This is there for you later when you receive the slides by email from the conference organisers, that you can actually have a look at this in more detail yourselves. So the reason why I put this slide in here was probably to show you what's on the bottom right-hand corner. So most of the actual students in our university, and even prior to the merger to form this university, are they're registered on courses in engineering and business. And you can see science and ICT follow through. So for the thought programs, it's engineering and business are the dominant ones, and those that actually have for research in terms of PhD registrations, it's mainly in the science and ICT. In addition to that, we have many collaborations with people, with community organisations, other universities, and also with lots of business and industry as well. They take part in program design, they take part in projects, sometimes they fund projects, and so on. And we also have a business incubation space so that our faculty of business can actually provide mentoring to companies so that they can spin into the university and make use of the expertise to help them to grow and become larger organisations in the future. And we also commercialise our basic research from the university, and a number of startup companies formed from that. But I'm not here today to tell you all about that. I'm here to talk to you about the engagement. But the reason, traditionally, I suppose, from an organisational structure point of view, we do a lot of engagement and community engagement, but we have always been structured more like a university that supports the labour market. So that kind of can be, has raised its own challenges at times when we are getting involved in community engagement. So I suppose community engaged learning and research actually can support our graduate attributes, and I've just listed them there. Because we have been formed now in 2019 at a time, when there's been a lot of change with respect to kind of being more responsible to society and responsive to their needs, as David mentioned earlier. We had the luxury of actually writing graduate attributes that actually now match kind of what society needs. So we kind of are here to generate lifelong learners who are digitally capable, focused global citizens where sustainability is really important and a key cornerstone for them in their lives. And also, we generate real world problem solvers, and a lot of that is embedded into the curriculum that have experience during their student journey of collaborating with external partners. So that community engaged learning can actually help those graduate attributes. So, as a responsive university, our vision is to create a better world together and produce the next generation of graduates and researchers that actually will have to adapt and change in a world that we're beginning to know less well, with all of the changes that are happening at the minute, particularly around the use of generative AI. And then we have lots of emergencies and disasters happening as well. So I think our graduates are going to be faced with a lot more issues, and they need to be more engaged during their journey in education to help them on that journey in the future. In addition to that, the legislation that set up the university, the new technological universities in Ireland, was legislated by the TU Act of 2018. It seems very, very recent when you hear of a university like Bologna that's 900 years old, and we're just about 5 minutes new as a university. But you can see here in the particular section 9 that we need to produce graduates that actually are socially responsible to the civic and economic life of society, and to collaborate with the communities, particularly in the regions that we actually serve. So that's actually quite important for us. So TU Dublin has a significant commitment to community engagement, And I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. And in our strategy, there's quite a strong statement on being able to continue and grow this and form active partnerships into the future. And the reason is because embedding community engagement and research within the curriculum actually can be hugely positive for the student experience. It can help improve retention of students and programs. It definitely validates our research and addresses societal challenges. It can actually help communities to further their goals and also kind of build a better community capacity to be able to do that themselves into the future. And when I come to the outcome section, then I'll show you one example of how that actually happened. So community engaged learning is all about collaborating with the community partners where the students, the academics and the partners sit down and co-design a particular project, and that's embedded into the final year project of the students. It gets graded, and I'll come back to that later as well. So the Students Learning with Communities program is a leading example of how this has actually worked for us prior to designation as a university over the past 16 years with underserved communities. And to be honest, much of this has been led by Dr. Catherine Bates, my colleague online, who headed up this programme for most of that period of time within the old structure that we had. So the actors in community engaged research and learning, obviously you have the academics and the students and the community partners designing and doing the projects, but you also need a leadership and somebody and a system to enable that. And our university management and executive team have been extremely kind of helpful in that regard and have approved this project as well at the highest level within the university to be evaluated so that it could be continued into the future. Also, in terms of, we've been enabled a little bit by funders, not hugely, unfortunately, so we're always advocating and lobbying for greater funding for these type of projects, particularly if they're leading to a PhD. So Research Ireland, who is the major funding agency for PhD research in Ireland, in recent years has announced societal challenge projects under various themes, and they usually announce about 3 of those per year. So that actually has been quite helpful. And also policymakers have been kind of pushing this agenda a little bit more in recent years as well. And nearly all of our government departments, not just the Department of Higher Education, but most of our government departments actually have a research function within them to kind of have greater connectivity between government and universities to solve these type of problems. So we're hopeful that this will kind of be better for us in the future and help us on our journey. Okay, so what is the Students Learning with Community all about? Well, it's a support entity that actually was set up to connect lecturers with partners, also to build sustainable relationships. And for anyone who's used to building relationships, that doesn't happen overnight. And it, requires a certain skill set. You're also dealing with people who are not used to communicating with academics or dealing with students and vice versa. So what this Students Learning with Communities support unit, which was headed up by Dr. Bates, at the time they've done actually a lot of work on networking opportunities. So they would have organised workshops, they would have set up modules specifically to help to train the staff and the students with specific learning outcomes, and also run summer schools and webinars that were accessible to community partners and to the academics. So it allowed this to flourish and foster over the years. And, there's been a lot of positivity from the programme. So this just gives us a little bit of a timeline. So prior to this 2008, any of this activity wouldn't have been directly funded within the university. But since 2008, the Higher Education Authority in Ireland actually provided significant funding for human capital initiatives. So this was a human capital initiative that TUW, or the old Dublin Institute of Technology, as it was then, applied for and secured funding for to build up this type of support system within the education sector. And that continued on until 2019. Obviously, as you know, it can be difficult to sustain financial situations sometimes and keep things moving and maybe expand it and get additional staff. So Catherine and her team would have actually applied to the European Commission for additional funding to allow the university to hire non-core staff to be able to continue on this journey. They've also published a number of articles on community engaged learning. And this actually, it thrived up until 2019. And it has thrived since, but in a different way. But in 2019, our university came into being, and that really meant that this was a time of complete change. Everything changed. We had new faculty structures, we had new professional services structures, and there was a kind of a little bit of a discomfort in thinking that, well, how will and where will students learning with communities fit? Will it go into the faculties and schools, or will it stay as part of a professional support office like it had done in the previous setup? So the first, between 2019 and 2022, as our new organisational structure was kind of being embedded, we were in this programme was not really running, and then COVID kicked in, so that obviously didn't help either. So the Magna Charta project for us came at a really good time because it allowed us then to kind of look to do an evaluation of this gem of a programme that had been running and that had served a lot of communities really well, particularly in Dublin city centre since 2008. So the evaluation and the Magna Charta project continued on until earlier this year. And during that time, we were continually advocating then to try and include the students learning with communities in the new structures. So now it has been included, but the PhD element of it is headed up by our office in Research Engagement and Impact, and the Sustainability Action Lab look after the students learning with communities where undergraduate students can do these projects as part of their training. So I'll come back to that later. So just to come back to the Magna Charta project, our project focused on evaluating the support. So we had an external research centre in Dublin City University, a sister organisation, and they're a centre that have huge expertise in evaluation, quality and inspection. So they actually did the data gathering and the evaluation and presented us with a report of their findings. And that is detailed quite well in the book chapter in the upcoming book. And we also kind of reflected on our own kind of support practices within the university as well, which is presented in the book chapter. And we used a kind of a change, leadership and management framework to help us in that regard. And then we assessed the outcomes and impact of the initiative, what worked well and what didn't work well, and then what recommendations we would have for people on this journey. So in terms of the management of change, how did we do that and what did we do? We kind of took a deep dive into the literature and what was happening in other universities around civic engagement, community engaged research and learning in other institutions, and also kind of the theoretical approach to change management and leadership management, including policy formation under the guidance of our ambassador, Professor John Davies. And we also looked at how to build these relationships sustainably and earn trust of the community organisations. So that allowed us then to create our own framework to analyse and understand the evidence we collected, to highlight and strengths and the weaknesses, and also to offer recommendations of how then we might amend our own policies and practices and embed this and make those recommendations available to others. So I'm going to take a break in my own talking and I'm going to show you 3 video snippets. The first one comes from the community partners, and this community partner is a St. John of God's, which they look after young adults with learning disabilities and intellectual issues generally. So they're going to, just for 3 minutes, just kind of show you, explain to you what the program meant for them and their involvement, how it helped them. Then there's Dr. Claire McDonnell as a lecturer is going to, we have a little video snippet from her experience as a lecturer and the importance of how to build that into your program. And finally, from a student from social care honours degree program who would, just from the student experience, his video is really, really long. So we've just kind of started it halfway through and given you about 2 or 3 minutes as well. So the next 9 minutes are 3 little video snippets for you to sit back and enjoy. There's also a QR code on the slides when you get the slides so that you can actually go directly to the full videos, and they're also available on YouTube. So maybe I'll minimize this. Thank you. Liam, yeah, Liam and Sarah, yeah. Sound?
Hi, hey, Hi, my name is Lisa provide day and residential support for people with an intellectual disability. My role, I'm an assistive technology coordinator, so I support the men and women who work with accessibility. The dream of building is for, and then for the computer science students, get to work hand-on with real clients, with real lived experiences, and produce some meaningful.
We came up with all the ideas, and we made videos to explain what the problem is, why we need the app, and how the app hopes to help us and the student could help us.
The plan was just go in, show the videos, share the problem, and then come back in a few months and see what the solution was. We wanted to be a part of the design. So over 14 weeks, every single Friday, we went into Kevin Street and we co-designed the apps with the students, which meant that our co-designers, the men and women we work with, and the support staff, because we're all co-designing together these solutions, so that the men and women were part of every step of the app development. And I suppose that's one of the beauties of these projects. It is true co-design. The men and women are there every step of the way, giving their great ideas and their lived experience, which the students can't get without the men and women being part of these projects. And that's why the apps at the end of the day are such a great success, because they've never been asked their ideas before. So this is a new thing. So we had to kind of walk them through that, build the capacity of we can all be designers, and then went in and in the afternoon worked in the labs, in the computer science labs, which is really important. This is the first time all of the men and women we work with got an opportunity to work in a mainstream. And these opportunities aren't there all the time. So TU Dublin have been an amazing support.
It's getting ideas like for people that to read and to write. It's getting ideas, is there an app out there to help other people, like me colleagues up in me centres. Like we don't know how to read or write, but when we co-design, we got an idea. There's an audio thing and speak select, and we do video messages and what we didn't know and that like that. So we went in there and we done all that.
Hi.
Was being able to have our students applying their knowledge that they have in a real world environment while also working on a project that was of benefit to community partners. So to me, it's a win-win situation. I'm based currently in the School of Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences, and that's where I've been involved in the community-based learning activities that I've implemented. But I also spent a 3-year secondment in the Learning, Teaching and Technology Centre, which was very important from the point of view of learning more about how community-based learning and teaching is implemented more widely across Technological University Dublin and other universities and institutes of technology. We've worked with a range of community partners over the years, so that would include the Core Youth Project, the Ashling Project, the Homework Project in Ballymun, and a number of local primary schools and secondary schools. It involves our second year students, and the community partners that they work with would be either a primary school or sometimes a secondary school with early secondary school students, or else a youth project or a homework club. So you're working with young people who are interested in science. Sometimes there would be young people who have already said they're interested in a science project, and other times it's a group that are involved in a particular activity and they already have said they particularly want to do science, but they're there as part of a homework club, and it's something that they get an opportunity to try out. So the students that are involved are second year students, and one of the things we was what module will work best, because you need to link the learning outcomes and the academic credit for our students to what they're going to be doing with the community partner. So the program is medicinal chemistry with pharmaceutical sciences, and the module is just called professional skills development. So it kind of does what it says in the tin, but it's applied to chemistry and to science. And it would include some workplace regulations to do with safety and handling chemicals in a safe way. And that also comes in very nicely with the project, because the students have to do a risk assessment of what they're going to be doing and check that it's safe to do it in the environment they're going to be in. Same controls that you'd have in a lab, there's no fume hood and things like that we would use. So it's their first opportunity usually to be the expert in the room. So they're working with the community partners and the young people, and they're the expert in the area of the science they're trying to communicate. But obviously the community partners are the experts in the area of how best to engage the students. So that tends to work really well, that combination. And the learning outcomes there would relate to skills like communication, working in teams, and also information research, and thinking more like a professional. The element of reflection, we made that stronger because that's a very important part of community engaged learning. It was just a much more real world and engaging project that they were involved in instead of what we would have used previously. And they also can see beyond the narrow confine of what their profession can do, that because of their science background, that they can then get involved in more activities like this
my group. Not just because of the person, but because of the goal observation. You have to be very informative about what's happening in your group, what's happening outside the group. You have to take yourself outside the group and imagine you're talking to a bunch of young lads, I don't know if I'm using the right word, then put yourself in that, okay, I'm going to be talking. Will it appease to them? Will it not? You know, so that and communication. If it's a project that you have to be talking to each other, it was an open platform, like nobody's the master of this, nobody's the master of that. There's no project from birth of my idea that doesn't have challenges. Or you have challenges with the information on which you're going to make researches, or you have challenges with yourself. So there was a lot of information.
Okay, there you got 3 perspectives, and there's a few more also on YouTube, which you can see. But I suppose because this is about embedding learning into the academic program, I suppose I just wanted to throw in a slide just about how that actually happens. So in Ireland, we have an overarching quality assurance body called Quality Qualifications Ireland, and they are responsible for ensuring the integrity and the quality of all of the education that's provided academically. And they also developed the standards for each of the different programs and also maintaining those standards. And they come in and do these evaluations. And I know today you have a number of program evaluations going on in your university here, and I wish you all the best of luck with that. So basically, really, I suppose what we have around each of the degree programs, we have an ordinary degree, honours degree, master's and PhD programs that I've just shown here. So each program has a set of descriptors which describe the standards that the students should actually meet. And usually these are categorized around knowledge, skills and competence. So in terms of the community engaged learning, we believe that the competence insight one is the most relevant one for the students to have their learning outcomes written around that descriptor. So you can see the text highlighted in bold there. It's about either having a personal view if you're a second year student, or maybe a more comprehensive view when you're a third or fourth year student, about real world problems associated with the knowledge you create that you have on your program. And as you go to master's and PhD, you're able to reflect and scrutinize a little bit more in that regard and lead out in it then by the time you come to a PhD. So I suppose one typical learning outcome might be, and we have a number that Catherine would have designed in her time with students learning with communities, and she's available online for questions after this. But basically, really, one might be that the students actually should be able to communicate and reflect on how the community learning is linked to the knowledge they received in the classroom. And then you can assess that either to an oral examination if there's a presentation of the work, or in the final dissertation of the student's thesis. And that can be given a particular assessment grade. And then it allows us then to ensure that, you know, back to the graduate attributes, that the students have kind of got a standard in that as part of their program. So in terms of the outcome and in terms of this program for us, it's really increased the students' quality of experience around teamwork, communication, and their own emotional intelligence. The students also would have received fresh perspectives on their project from the community partners, while the community partners would have learned better how to articulate research questions. They could continue this on in the future. So we would have had awards for this, and the award ceremony there gives more student perspectives on how they felt this actually was important, and they generated posters, and you can look at that online. So in terms of other outcomes and impacts for communities, in Ireland, some of our communities, they're not-for-profit organisations, but they can set themselves up as a social enterprise as well. Not too sure if that's something that can happen here. So that means then that if they do kind of run a little business through the community, that the profits of that go back into the community. So it's like a cooperative type of system. So there's a recycling company that actually came out of a community project, and they actually took on the recommendations of the business degree students who actually helped them to kind of implement time-saving components into their dismantling of electrical items. And the impact for the community partner on that is they were able to secure funding to continue this and develop the programme further. With St. John of God's, from the previous presentation, from the video that you see that we saw, they were able to go on and design a toolkit based on the work, and they actually received an award from the United Nations in 2023 for that particular work. So this has knock-on effects for the students, but also for the community partners. Okay, so back to the evaluation. And one thing that John really guided us really well in this regard was looking at kind of the insights and, you know, what worked well and what didn't work well. The framework that we generated had 9 different stages. So these here you can see I've just provided one example on the slide for each of those that worked well. But you know, you can look at this in your own time for sure, and this is elaborated on quite a lot in the actual book chapter itself. And from our point of view, what worked well just in terms of building a guiding coalition was having advisory boards that involve the community partners. That really worked well for us. Also, in terms of what worked less well, I suppose the lack of a civic and societal engagement strategy is one that jumps out at me here, because we still don't have one as a university. It's kind of embedded in different strategies, say within the faculties and schools and within the professional management functions, but we still have yet to have an overarching strategy. One that you mightn't actually think about sometimes was we didn't have enough physical spaces for collaborations like this to take place, so it kind of, it's really helping us now as we chart out the future for this programme going forward. So where is it at this point in time? As I mentioned, we have split out the research engagement from the thought programme, Students Learning with Communities. So that is now part of the Sustainability Action Lab, just from earlier this year. And in 2024-25, they supported 19 projects. That is a little bit lower than what we would have been doing originally. But once, hopefully, that, there's more staff in that functional area, if we can get the funding for that maybe that will rise. Like all universities now, we're also very much, I suppose, framed through the lens of the sustainability goals. So now the projects are all linked with the SDG goals as well. So everything is for mutual benefit, and it's really about developing key competencies in the students and also the community partners. In terms of our own office, we have a kind of a medium support model in action. I'm not going to go through the next 2 slides. We facilitate workshops, help build relationships, etc. We've set up an all-island network in Ireland with other universities to try and encourage this as well. And so the journey goes on in a slightly different way. But for TU Dublin, I suppose community engaged research and learning is a really structured and a value added approach actually for us to be able to contribute to addressing societal challenges on a daily basis. It is embedded in the curriculum and can be assessed, and it really aligns really strongly with the principles of the Magna Charta as well, particularly around the civic responsibility and ensuring that we engage more fully with the communities where we reside. So our recommendation, I suppose, is that you need to lay good foundations in your organisational structure for this to kind of be sustained. Also find a route to implementation, and I appreciate that for universities this can be difficult. It can be difficult to undergo change to embed these activities, but it is something that is really important and more important as we go along in the next decade or so. And also it's important to plan to try to anchor these, even if you're using external funding to help set it up, but you need to look at how you can sustain it at a later stage. So there are a number of recommendations. It's about always maintaining the sense of urgency, and you can read this in your own time. It is important to kind of set up cross-functional leadership teams and to include the community partners as well in those, in laying those foundations. From our point of view, just one little point around the urgency. We maintained the sense of urgency to try and keep this within the structures of TU Dublin. But not only that, between 2019 and 2023, when this kind of dipped a little, COVID was a good excuse at the time, which was fair enough. But after COVID, the lecturers started asking, when are we going to have this up and running again? So they also started to advocate for this, which really is important. The urgency comes from all sides. You can offer foundational, intermediate or advanced supports to help you in your route to implementation. Quick wins are always nice, celebrate successes, put them out there on your social media platforms for your university and all of that. And, where you have the financial capability, it is good to try and invest in staff resources. Anchoring and sustaining, I'm not going to go through these either, but I'm just going to come to the very bottom one, influencing external environments. It is really important that as universities, if we are to do this, we need to advocate with policymakers nationally and from our point of view across Europe as well to try and embed these activities. We also want to kind of create and develop sustainable funding models. So we're always advocating with our funding bodies in Ireland to try to do that. And also when you're hiring your staff and when you're undergoing promotion for your staff in your university, it's important to try and build these activities into the criteria for those as well, to try and help anchor and sustain this activity going forward. So that's all I have to say, you will be glad to know. But I just want to finish up with some acknowledgements. Dr. Catherine Bates, who definitely was the major lead in this. And if you have any questions, she's online and is best placed to answer. Professor John Davies, with whom we would never have gone through this process as effectively and as smoothly. He has been great at focusing our mind and also getting us to tease out what didn't work well, because we're always trying to look at what we do well. Our external evaluators were extremely efficient, doing the surveys, focus groups and interviews with all the relevant parties. And then also they also interviewed many of the community partners. So the community partners in an anonymous fashion were able to give their true sense, and they weren't shy about giving an opinion if it was negative. So it allowed us to learn. My own Vice President for Research and Innovation, Dr. Brendan Jennings, who actually provided funding for the evaluation to take place, and our TU Dublin Research Engagement Advisory Committee. We now have an advisory committee that actually has external people from all walks of life, community, business, government and funding agencies. And I'd also particularly like to thank the American International University of Bangladesh, and particularly Farine and Nazia and Carmen for your warm hospitality and welcome, and the allowing us to be able to present. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the day. So thank you very much. And that's me. Okay. Do you want to do questions or do you want to? No, probably not. If anyone has any questions that they want to ask, Catherine or myself are more than happy. But also we are available by email, and this presentation will be available to you in the future as well. And I just put in some images of Dublin there just to let you see. It's not often you see Dublin on a sunny day, but I decided to pick them out. But anyway, so thank you. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Who are your community partners? Because community partners in Ireland and in Bangladesh.
Completely, yes. So our community partners, so it because we're very much embedded in the region. So each campus, we have 5 campus locations in Dublin. So we have community partners in Dublin city centre. So we have a community group called the Liffey group, a community group, and this is just a group of residents who are living in a kind of an underserved part of kind of privileged part of Dublin City that actually have formed to try and kind of make their area much better. But we also work with, I suppose, let me see, St. John of God's is one, and they look after people with learning disabilities. We have links with South Dublin County Council, and their sporting organisations, and some of their voluntary organisations. We have links with youth groups in Blanchardstown. We have, in that area of the city. We also, so they're the general community partners. Catherine could add a few more, I am sure. We also have partners with small little groups that kind of set themselves up to try maybe and improve recycling in their area, or other kind of citizens groups as well, and bodies like that, and charities, local charities, yes. Yeah, and children's health charities, and then we also would sometimes work with primary and secondary schools, as Dr. Claire MacDonald mentioned as well, in the region, yes.
Thank you very much. It was a very enlightening presentation. Actually, I just, for the shortage of time, probably I'll hit the question that I had that prompted in my mind. And if Catherine is online, probably she can
Catherine?
also. Can you hear us, Catherine?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Question.
Yeah,
Let me
great.
just lay out the question first. I was just wondering about the how you have embedded this thing sort of numerically or through a process for assessing academically, which is probably one of the greatest challenge when we have a normative change measured as an academic achievement. So you have this L8, L9, and L10, which essentially the difference between these two, for example, the master's program and the PhD, is in one which a student probably has scrutinized and reflected on the norms, social norms, and and relationship, and has acted on it, acted to change. And the other one is where he has led for the PhD. If you're getting what I'm talking about, your slides on for the masters and the PhD. So sometimes you might even find somebody who is acting on it is also a leader. So do we have a sort of a scale that, okay, at this scale, if it happens, then it becomes a PhD qualification, and at this scale is for masters, because we're talking about a norm-changing thing here taking place in society, which is very nebulous to measure in precise terms, and then translate into an academic sort of degree award thing. So I was just wondering if you could throw a few more lights on this one.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And actually that idea of almost looking at the scale of the engagement and the level of the engaged research and seeing what level of qualification it merits is a really interesting idea.
It comes into the examinations process, and it is a scalable. For a thought master's program, it's easier to scale. For research masters or PhD, you're kind of relying on the examiners kind of to actually build that into their kind of assessment of the thesis. So it can be a little bit more difficult to scale that. For a thought program, it's easier to do that. But for a PhD, it depends on the examiner. So the examiners need to be made aware of kind of what's important in that regard. Does that answer the question? Okay, Catherine?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think you can hear me. Can you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? I don't think you can hear me, can you?
We can hear you, Catherine. You can.
Oh, you can you? Oh, sorry. Okay. Thanks. No, I was talking earlier, but I don't know that it came across. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, the idea of even looking at the level of the engagement and using that as an indicator of what awards the students should get. And that's definitely something worth exploring in practice. It tends to be that the students would be on a particular program, they would be set a set of requirements, and there would be a set of learning outcomes for them that would sort of line up with that graph that Mary showed, which is the national sort of standards for the different levels of education and qualifications. So, for example, with an undergraduate degree, some of the learning outcomes that we might be suggesting, there would be obviously learning outcomes related to the discipline knowledge, but also there would be generic ones. So, for example, it might be, they might synthesize their learning into a project outcome, and they might apply their discipline-specific knowledge to a project with the community, or they might reflect on and evaluate their learning experience and the role of their discipline in society. So, the specific learning outcomes for the specific project will often be developed in line with that overall framework to make sure that people are sort of meeting those requirements through their work, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Catherine. Finally, we see you. We are missing you very much, but we are very happy to have you online, and we are very happy that you could participate and answer this question. Thank you. Thank you, Mary and Catherine, both, for your wonderful session. I'm sure we have learned a lot, and I'm sure this presentation will give us universities new perspective to think community engagement and how we can work more and plan accordingly for further community engagement procedures. I want to apologize a bit for the technical glitches that sometimes we had. We had some echoes, we have some technical problems, but the reason behind that is you can see this entire event is being live streamed on both YouTube and Zoom platform. We have around more than 40 participants in Zoom coming from different European countries, from Poland, Ukraine, North Macedonia, Ireland, and United Kingdom. So they have joined as this event has been advertised by Magna Charta Observatory. A big thanks to Carla. She has been sent out this link to all Magna Charta signatories, and they have joined online. Let me take this moment also to thank all our online participants. Welcome to the symposium, and thank you for your precious time on our symposium. Now, we are going to head out to our next session. So we have a panel discussion, a very important one, titled Shaping Responsible Futures, Higher Education and Community Engagement. This session brings together eminent policymakers, academic leaders, and experts to discuss the evolving role of society universities can play. Please welcome our distinguished panelists. I'll start with Professor Misbauddin Ahmed, Chairman, Bangladesh Accreditation Council. I would cordially request her to come on stage. Together. I would next invite our next panelist, David J. Locke, Secretary General, Magna Charta Observatory, to come on stage. I would like to invite our next panelist, Professor Dr. Muhammad Anwar Hussain, Member, University Grants Commission of Bangladesh. Our next panelist is Professor Farhat Anwar, Vice Chancellor, RAC University. Our next panelist is Professor Dr. Anwar Hussain, Advisor, Faculty of Business Administration, American International University, Bangladesh. We have our panelist on stage. Now I would like to call on our moderator for this session. We have our very own madam who has been planning this event for so long. There couldn't be a more appropriate moderator for this session. Professor Dr. Farheen Hassan, Director, AIUB, IQAC.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nazia. Good afternoon, esteemed guests, panelists, honorable vice chancellors, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly an honor and privilege to welcome you all to this very special session of this symposium, which is hosted by AIUB. We are privileged to have with us esteemed educators, leaders from NGOs, and professionals from organizations committed to education and development. Together, they bring diverse experience and perspectives on how universities should engage with communities and contribute meaningfully to national and global progress. Our conversation and discussion today will allow us to examine the transformative potential of universities, not in isolation, but in partnership with broader society and community. We will reflect on local realities and global best practices, asking the important question, how can universities stay both responsive and responsible in a rapidly changing world? With that, let me now guide our discussion by posing the first set of questions to our esteemed panelists on the stage. Let us begin this dialogue by hearing from the Chairman of Bangladesh Accreditation Council, Dr. Mesbauddin Ahmed. Sir, around the world, higher education institutes are increasingly being called upon to integrate sustainability, ethics, and inclusiveness into their teaching, research, and outreach. How do you see the balance between academic excellence and social responsibilities in higher education institute? And may I just add a little bit with it? What governance models ensure both accountability and institutional independence according to the Bangladesh Accreditation Council's standards and criteria?
Hello. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Farheen, for bringing me in this panel discussions. I'm very happy to be here and take part in this panel discussion. Actually, in our country, we are trying to enhance the quality of higher education, and through a system, we call that, have developed what is called and implementing what is called the qualification framework. The framework gives you the directives of how we should be running the programs, academic programs, so that we can develop, we can have quality graduates produced. And to do the outcome has been specifically defined. They should have, the quality graduates should have certain qualities like fundamental qualities, social qualities, and creative qualities, and all these things are being defined here. And to achieve those qualities, we need to develop what is called the curricula. The curricula has to be redefined and redone, and that has been done. We have been trying to develop the new curricula, which is based on OBE, That is what we call outcome-based education. That is a need-based. So these things are done here, and we're trying to follow that. But here, the MCO is bringing here, I think, is a very novel idea and a sort of missionary spirit to carry on with this sort of programs. I really appreciate. And I have got a few points about these things, how our universities here in Bangladesh should turn themselves to the commitment of social, to undertaking what is called social responsibility to abide by. I just want to tell that our universities should redefine themselves to take care of this social responsibilities. They come not in isolated way. It's about economic development. It's about social development and the challenges that we're facing to do that. Our universities are in very different shapes. They are not in a very happy position to pursue all these things. At the moment, what I see that our universities are struggling to survive because they are not, most of them are not universities in the true sense, because they are not able to perform their duties. They are not being able to deliver quality education or do excellent research, which is what the university should be doing, and to serve the society and the community. But nonetheless, we must aim, we must go for future directives, to go for asking the universities to come up and take up your social responsibilities and serve the community that you live. I have got 3 points here. We need to make a core shift in our educational system from ivory towers to community-anchored ecosystem. That means we need our education system that we are running here in this presently should go for community system, community-based. That is, they must go for down to earth system. I have got 3 points actually. One is like this. We need to redefine our systems for economic value creation. Our higher education institutions can drive economic values by directly engaging with industry, entrepreneurs, and local economy. To do that, we need curriculum aligned with real-world needs. Industry-academia collaboration is a must. That has to be established in a formal with a partnership, and key sectors like ready-made garments, IT, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and blue economy curricula should be co-designed so that industry experts to include practical skills, internship, and live projects. Our future-oriented skills have to be integrated. Modules on the fourth industrial revolution, technology, data analysis, and sustainable practices, supply chain management, and soft skills, right, like critical thinking, communication, problem solving, into all disciplines are not just sciences. That's all these things are to be incorporated. Entrepreneurship ecosystem have to be developed. We need to create robust incubation centers and startup labs that provide seed funding, mentorship, legal aid, and networking opportunities for student and community entrepreneurs. This can spark jobs creation rather than just job seeking. Applied research has to be done, but on the basis of local problems. focus on Bangladesh problems, redirect research priorities towards national challenges. Examples include agriculture, developing climate resilient crops, efficient irrigation, techniques for drought-prone regions, and post-harvest reduction. These things have to be undertaken by the universities to do research, to get them connected with the community, like public health research on arsenic mitigation, dengue prevention, affordable medical devices, and community health models, urban planning, solutions for traffic congestion, waste management, and affordable housing in cities like Dhaka and Chattogram, and technology transfer office. There has to be provisions for doing that as well. Establish TTOs to patent and commercialize research findings, turning academic knowledge into marketable products and services that benefit local businesses. Also, we can do what is called leveraging local economy. That can be done by local sourcing. Universities, especially those outside major cities, can source food supplies and services from local vendors, injecting capital directly into the community. Skill development for the local workforce, offer certificate courses, night classes, and vocational training for the local community in areas like digital literacy, carpentry, tailoring, and mobile phone repairs, enhancing the overall skill base of the region. Also, number two, the most important one is redefining our social value creation. That can be done by our higher education institutions. Social value is about improving the quality of life, promoting equity, and strengthening civil society. That can be done by embedding civil engagement and responsibility. The mandatory service learning, like integrate community service into the curriculum. For example, law students can offer free legal clinics. Medical students can run health camps in the rural areas, and engineering students can build low-cost solutions for local problems. And centers for community development, establish dedicated centers that act as a bridge between the university and the community, identifying needs and mobilizing university resources to address them. Also, promoting techniques, promoting inclusion and equity. Access for marginalized group, developing productive outreach scholarships and preparatory programs for students from low-income backgrounds, ethnic minorities, and persons with disabilities. Next, the lifelong learning, offer continuing education programs, part-time degrees, and online courses for professionals and adults who want to upskill or reskill, making education a lifelong pursuit rather than a one-time event. These things can be done and can be pursued by the universities. Sorry. But what is important is all these things can be done, but we will face challenges. The challenges are there. There will be challenges of the society or the governance, challenges of mindset, challenges will be finding the funding, challenges will be in coordination, and so on. We have to overcome those and take care of, if we do believe that the university should go and serve the society and the community for the development of the country. So this is overall challenge for the country, for the universities, to make a shift an enabling shift. There has to be redefined. I could defining the role of the universities. That has to be a major shift in the process. So finally, I would like to say, we have to have a new contract with the society. For a higher education, Bangladesh is truly redefined its role. To do it, it must enter into a new social contract with the nation. The mission should expand from producing graduates to nurturing problem solving, innovations, and engaged citizens. By becoming anchor institutions deeply embedded within their communities, universities can unlock immense potential. They can help Bangladesh not only achieve its economic goals, but also build a more equitable, resilient, and knowledgeable society. The journey requires visionary leadership, early support, policy support, and collective will to transform the ivory towers into a dynamic town square of progress. And I would also like to say that to do all these things, to have the provisions there, when we change to redefine the activities of the universities or the definition of the universities, we must not neglect the other primary duties the university should be doing. The providing quality education, doing research, showing the path to the nation, and helping the development of the society as a whole. So there has to be I call a symbiosis of the whole, a pleasant and a happy marriage between the two things together. All these things can be done provided we have the intentions to do that, provided we are convinced that we should be doing community services, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. You have correctly identified the challenges of our century, the climate change, inequality, demographic shifts, and the digital transformation, the technological development. And in fact, as I have also the privilege to work with Bangladesh Accreditation Council, the community service and social responsibility is one of the criteria of Bangladesh Accreditation Council. So if any university is going to be assessed, this is one of the criteria that the university has to pass. So, but there are 63 criteria, and among them, it is already there. Now, my next question comes to David, that the Magna Charta Observatory, since its founding, it has reminded universities of their core principles: academic freedom, institutional autonomy, and a profound responsibility to society. Today, these principles must be reinterpreted and applied in light of global imperatives like climate resilience, social justice, inclusive growth, and transparent governance. So my question to you, how can universities embody the Magna Charta principle while leading as agents of sustainability, accountability, and inclusivity? And if I also add with it the Sustainable Development Goal, safeguarding and reaching that, how your principle can guide the universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, it's from my microphone.
You've put the question as if the two are somehow opposed, and they are not. We've just had a wonderful and very comprehensive exposition of what it is that universities can do with society to serve society. And when it comes to universities taking action, as I agree they must, it starts with some kind of strategy or strategic plan within the university. And in the spirit of a relationship with society, my suggestion would be that universities should involve the society in the development of those plans. Now, if universities are signatories of the Magna Carta, and even if they are not, the values are for everybody, whether the university signs up or not. It's important that the university is committed to those values. We will not accept a signatory unless the governing body has signed to say that is what we want to be. And having signed to say that is what we want to be, what the university can then do to make that happen is to make sure that all staff know that they have signed up to those values. And through the normal and natural operation of the university, universities can ensure that those values are put into practice. When staff are appraised, it's not just how many students you've taught, how many courses you've taught, or how much revenue you have brought in from research. It's how have you put the values into practice? And when you are considering reward systems for departments or for individuals, those values can count as part of that. Now, you ask specifically about the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, these can be, or our response to these can be developed in association with our community. There are 17 of them, as you all know, and no university can comprehensively address all of them at the same time and still allow their staff to have some sleep. And so consequently, it's a question of which values fit into which departments of the university, which we should prioritize, and what success looks like. Now, I know we change the world one step at a time, but we need a map. We need a kind of strategy, and that can be taken back to what we expect of departments, what we expect of individual staff, and I would argue what we expect of students as well, because our biggest impact is going to be through what those students go out and do after they have completed their program.
Thank you, David. If I put it in a nutshell, that this creation of values, it can be part of the strategic plan of the university. At the same time, the mapping of the values with different faculties, with different programs, and ultimately the outcome, it should also be measured, that whether those values are being successfully earned or implemented or not. And maybe I would also like to refer to Dr. Mary, that she has also mentioned the key performance indicator, that both for the academic, for research, and for different internal stakeholders of the university, this can be measured, that how well the values were being achieved. Thank you. Now, my next question will be for Dr. Anwar Hussain, sir, the member of University Grants Commission, Bangladesh. In Bangladesh and beyond, the higher education sector stands at a crossroads, as you know, sir. It can either remain traditional in its scope or evolve as a proactive force in shaping sustainable futures. Universities that embrace these values can not only lead in global rankings, but also become catalysts for systematic change, helping nations to meet their commitments to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, while also ensuring that no one is left behind. Now, I would like to ask you that how can the universities address the urban-rural divide in education and community service, because we know that in Bangladesh, the city, Dhaka, is very well developed, and people come from different regions in Dhaka for education, other than few other public universities throughout the country. And what actionable strategies would you recommend for universities to be both globally competitive and locally responsive?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Like it's about, first question is about sustainable development. And if we think about sustainable development, and this is a new idea of developing our society and developing the communication between higher education and society. So there's no way to follow the traditional way of thinking in higher education philosophy. So it's already has been shaped, and there is no way to get the traditional way of doing things. So in this context, your main focus on urban and rural divide. So if we think about urban-rural divide on the issue of higher education, things in terms of epistemological standpoint, is not only urban-rural divide, but it's one facet of the whole scenario. The core point is, like what's meant by education, and is education is a commodity or human rights, and which track of understanding follow in our higher education landscape, and which one is promoting on what purposes. So how our political economy is globally connected. If we think about the answer of these questions, so it focuses on the reasons for urban-rural divide. And think about this, urban divide in terms of socioeconomic context. The majority of people live in different ways, and the very few people, it's less than 5% can afford to buy education from any universities of the world. And definitely one is like AIUB. It's not a big deal for them to get, send their children to, AIUB. But if you think the majority of people in Dhaka, they can't afford it. So is the center point is education policy, education system. And if we connect this education policy or system with sustainable development, I'm not sure what strategy are following by sustainable development, given the dominant hegemonic perspective of sustainable development, because this sustainable development may not be that much sustainable to maintain the higher education society or community linkage, because it's following the different trajectory, unfortunately. So we are focusing on business incubation, and I don't know what is mean by that, and I don't know what are the outcome of this business incubation to protect the rights of the people who are living in the streets and their education, their life, and people living in slums, and who, how many people are living over there. And I don't know I know for sure, social inequality is increasing. And I'm not sure how can we address this social inequality with the proper education system. And I know based on the hegemony, political economic structure, why social inequality is increasing. And on this in this context, human rights, social justice, sustainable development is a new way of doing the business. So I'm not sure how can we bridge the gap between higher education and community. So there are lots of things. There are lots of things we need to address if we really mean to bridge the gap between education and society. Because you know, like at the epistemic point, again, we need to, you know, search for the answer, what's meant by education, because in the education enlightened people, and if we think about enlightened people, they, you know, you know, represent the lights to promote good things, drive out bad things. So, you know, if we would like to expand good things and shed lights over there, our rivers should not be, you know, polluted and out and, you know, wipe out from the map. So, you know, and our air should be, you know, better for breathing. But yeah, that's the way is creating lots of complexity. I hope, you know, this Magna Charta project will be more helpful to you know, respond the question so that, you know, we can get a better picture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. And in fact, the research project that we have worked on with Magna Charta Observatory, it is on Coral slum area. And we have worked with the problems on climate action. Our architectural student, they went to the area and they have designed sustainable green housing for the local residents. So there are a few steps that universities are taking, but of course, as you have mentioned, it should be a total countrywide and a drive for all the universities to have the community engagement and to drive these values. Now, my next question will be for Dr. Farhat Anwar, sir, the Vice Chancellor of BRAC University. That sir, higher education institutes are more than centers of teaching and research. As we know, the third university mission is the service to the society, community. And they are the anchors of social transformation, drivers of knowledge-based economies, and partners in, of course, sustainable development. My question to you is, how do you measure value creation in higher education in Bangladesh's context beyond employability? Because we know employability is a big problem in Bangladesh. Many graduates are now unemployed. At the same time, creating value. I mean, how do you measure these two different things?
Yeah, well, employability is a problem is a global problem. So not that Bangladeshi graduates are only unemployed. Let me start from a perspective. Particularly, our chairman and member have highlighted certain issues which are challenges within local. But we are talking about what the question that you asked is more in terms of how can we translate all these issues that have been discussed more of in a format way, a systematic way. How can we systematize that? The first dimension is that what are we into as university? We are part of the knowledge economy. It is accepted, and whether we like it or not, that is our task. So first we need to identify that do we need to go beyond the knowledge economy? The answer is don't do that. Don't go into an area which is not ours. So when we are part of this particular knowledge economy, what are the universities supposed to attain? So universities for me, and of course we can go on adding to it, but basically there are 4 pillars. And the first is, of course, when we talk in terms of acquisition of knowledge. And I'll get into that and later, that how can we acquire knowledge and what is the perspective of acquisition of knowledge. The second, what we call is creation of knowledge. Then we call is transmission of knowledge. And the fourth is the advancement of knowledge. These are the 4 pillars based on which the universities are supposed to prosper and go ahead. So the moment we say acquisition of knowledge, we are primarily coming up and saying that for a university to survive, or for universities as a whole to survive, democratization of knowledge is essential. And when we say democratization of knowledge is essential, automatically we are talking about partnership, the 17th ultimate goal of SDG. So we are not going beyond SDG at all. The only perspective would be, as Professor Han was also saying, are we supposed to do everything and anything? The answer is no. As you were saying, that you focused on 2 dimensions of SDGs, and focused on that, you did your research. So you could be AIUB could be specialized in this particular area. And within, again, let us remind ourselves of the fact, we're not just talking about 17 SDGs. Within SDGs, we are talking about 100+ goals, and every single one of them is an issue. So I could specialize in any one of those areas. And just imagine, the opportunities are unbelievably high. So once you have these particular pillars, and you know why you survive, and you know that one needs to open up, automatically we can see that how the SDGs are coming in. But again, going back to what the chairman had said, what is the purpose? The outcome. What are the outcomes that we look at? I look at it from a perspective of well-being. While we were having our tea, we were discussing certain things, and I was primarily thinking in terms of what is this well-being all about? So well-being of what? Well-being of the society. Well-being designed based on these 4 pillars. So now let us translate that into in a matrix format. So we have our pillars and we have our well-being criteria. What are the well-being criteria? We have economic well-being, which everyone talks about. So are we contributing as academics, as universities for economic well-being? Quite obviously. This is where your job creation, your entrepreneurs development, even R&Ds and stuff like that come into being. All of them need to be translated into, at the end of the day, application, which you were talking about. So you have economic well-being. What about social well-being, which Professor Anwar was talking about? That at the end of the day, how are we contributing to social well-being? Now, the moment we say economic well-being, you can measure the economic well-being criteria in measurable terms automatically now. Same thing is happening with regard to your social well-being. The third dimension is what we call the physiological well-being. And physiological well-being is something which today's world is also very, very important, the health dimension of it. So it's not just the physical dimension or the economic dimension of it, but we are talking about beyond that. I'll give you an example. All right, I'll give the example in a minute's time once I finish. And after that is what we are now fighting, the entire world is talking about, is the environmental well-being. And last but not least, which is now a burning issue globally, is what we call the mental well-being. So these are the 5 dimensions which is part of an entire matrix. Now, is it a local problem or a global problem? For me, it is a local problem. It's not a local problem, it's a global problem. And when we talk in terms of global problem, the cause could be different. The effect is the same. So the moment we say that the cause is different, that is where probably us as researchers need to revisit. The methodology of research might be different. The pedagogy of teaching could be different in terms of learning, but the purpose remains the same. And that is why this globalization becomes extremely, extremely important. And how can we measure all of these things? That is also provided in the SDGs, if I may say so quite clearly, the bottom lines of SDGs. Are we looking at prosperity? How much prosperity is it coming up with? Are we looking at development of people? How are we looking at in terms of, how are we looking in terms of planet? The partnership itself, the productivity. So it is already there. Not that we don't have to reinvent, the structure is there. We need to systematize these structures together. Let me give you 2 examples which are now burning issues. Now, this was last month, I was visiting the US. So every single time when we talk in terms of knowledge, we expect the knowledge is going to be exported from the north to the south. This is what is taken for granted. Now, this is something very important for you to absolutely take up. So I was invited by one of the associations. We know there are hundreds of associations out there. So I was invited by one of the associations of Bangladesh in New York. So I didn't know why they were inviting me. I thought a vice chancellor is gone, so they were just inviting me. I will not name the association for the time being. So I went out there and they said, we have an issue and you need to resolve that. I said, what is your issue? Our issue is, so I said, could you please explain what this particular issue is? And they said that you can see us, we are our association primarily comprises of, in New York, the blue collar workers, not the white collar workers, but the blue collar workers. And we need to reskill and we need to upskill. And the amount of money that we need to spend here for reskilling and upskilling is not available to us. We have come from your country. Maybe we are citizens of this country now. It is your responsibility as well to reach out to us. Imagine. Is it impossible? Of course not. Can we do it in terms of specialization? We can. So this is one particular, you see, so when we come up and we say it's a local problem, it's not a local problem. Let me come up with another issue. Now, I was speaking at the United Nations, and therefore, after we were having, since I am from business, so I was just visiting Wall Street for a particular purpose. Wall Street being what it is, they always talk in terms of money, and all of us are aware of that. So they were coming up with an issue, and they were addressing us as, again, academics. And they said that you guys are only interested in future. I said, obviously, we'll be interested in future. That's what we teach the young minds. That is our task. So it's quite obvious. And they came up and they said, we are fed up of your Gen Z philosophy. And this is across the board. Everywhere in the world, they're talking about Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen Z, or the Gen Alpha, which is still coming in. So what about the baby boomers? I said, what's wrong with the baby boomers? And they came up with something which we forget. They said, 70% of the money is with the baby boomers. By 2030, every single one of them is going to retire. How are you going to manage this particular money diverted to this Alpha and Gen Z who have no money? The only thing they can do is talk. A very important question. You see, so are we really talking about local problems? This is an issue that we need to address. So my perspective is, and this is where I would go to Magna Carta, I don't think we should talk in terms of 1,000 universities. We should talk in terms of uniting global universities, all of them under one umbrella, where we can ensure that knowledge is democratized, is exchanged. And I can tell you one thing, and this is, I'm placing it very humbly. People come up and tell me, what does Bangladesh have? Now, let's not forget, the first university of the world took birth here. We know what knowledge is. We can tell the world what the history of knowledge is, particularly when you talk in terms of tertiary education. Sorry? Nalanda University, of course, Nalanda. The first university took birth in our part of the world. Let us also tell you one thing, and this is, I'll come up to you, the laboratory part that you were talking about. So it just struck me that this is something which is very realistic. One of the major issues we discussed today is, of course, climate change. Bangladesh is the largest delta of the world, which is what? Which is what the future is scared of. It does not really matter whether you're in the west, east, north, south. Everywhere, climate change is going to result in what we call creation of deltas. And we have that. Third, we have another dimension which we think that that's a threat. We know what AI is happening, what AI is doing. People call it artificial intelligence. I call it augmented intelligence because it basically helps us. Don't be dependent on that. You were talking about data and you were scared about data. And we know that there is every reason to be scared about false data and false information. So that is obviously there. But what do we have? Bangladesh is the most densely populated country on earth amongst large population, just the reverse of Ireland. And we have that. For any technology work, if we need to undertake, we need population density. So that is another thing that we have. And for last but not least, when we talk about SDGs, we talk about sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about entrepreneurship and development enterprises. Bangladesh houses the largest density of development enterprises in the world. I call Bangladesh, and with all humility, please, we have at our disposal the largest living laboratory of the world as we speak. And we offer the world the entire thing. Then this is where we have to come in, join together and solve the problems of the world. So I personally believe that this globalization or democratization of the knowledge is the only way out, with certain systems, of course, in place, and we can take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Particularly for the part of the well-being. And that day I was going through a paper and it talked about the same thing which you have mentioned, that nowadays the well-being is, there are 4 kinds of well-being. You have mentioned few, and like physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being. So all these 4 are now part of the overall well-being part. Thank you, sir. Now, I would move to Professor Dr. Anwar Hussain, sir. He's the advisor of Faculty of Business Administration. Sir, as you know, the role of higher education institutes, it's not limited to producing graduates, but extends to shaping citizens, building communities, and creating real-world impact. In Bangladesh, as in many parts of the globe, universities are facing the challenges and opportunity of becoming more responsive to the need of society, bridging the gap between academia, as Anwar Sir was mentioning, and the communities they serve. Now, sir, what do you think? What role does academic freedom play in driving research agendas towards values, community engagement, and social justice? And through curricula, through pedagogy, and the overall university's process and if you consider the cultural and national context of Bangladesh.
Thank you. Well, you see, we have been listening to very interesting discussion here on higher education enterprises, especially in the context of SDG. Now, the point is, when you are talking about academic freedom, I think that is a very critical issue, because the knowledge can develop and thrive when there is no restriction, there is no constraint. Sometimes we call brainstorming. In a brainstorming technique, what we do, we ask people to come up with ideas which are weird, not even usable and realistic. But from the process of, combing these different ideas, you come up with the correct one. Now, university lives through a community. In a society, what is a society? Society is a system through which we live. So community, my first idea is to talk about the community and know about the community before thinking about research or multiple actions that the university takes in terms of, training up or gearing up knowledge and disseminating knowledge. But academic freedom is not supposed to come only by lip service. It has to be given. That's why the governance issue comes here. When a teacher talks in the classes, sometimes he mentions many issues. And the society, if it is very sensitive, it might react to that. And in Bangladesh, the context is very thriving. It is very difficult to speak out your mind, to speak out your knowledge, idea sharing, which could be termed as a heretic one. The university can do this by promoting academic discussion, by providing support and creating new knowledge in the new frontiers, especially by allowing faculty members to undertake research, incentivizing research, especially in the areas they would like to gear up their effort, and to protect the faculty members when the society or big lobbyists put pressure on the academic freedom of the faculty members. This is very critical. Sometimes we see that it is not coming. I'm talking from the context of Bangladesh. And sometimes the universities are pressurized by the political beliefs of the party in power in terms of selection of faculty members. So I believe the meritocracy should be the only selection criteria in university, not only for teachers, but also for the students. But when you talk about service to community, sometimes you have to make some, practical issues will come. Suppose the issue came here, whether the university students are from urban area or rural areas. Well, in our survey, in AIUB, I have seen, because I have already done a socioeconomic survey of the undergraduate students in AIUB, 94% come from the urban areas. I mean, if you take, say, Borishal, Khulna, Jashore as urban areas, it is like that. And if you bring the issue of gender parity, 34% of the IBA undergraduate students are female and 64% are male. You know, in the West, they have a tenureship. In the tenureship, the university teacher is protected in terms of his employment. But in our country, this employment guarantee is not there, even in the public university or in the private university. So academic freedom, a teacher might jeopardize his employment if he comes up with his mind. There are certain taboos in our society, like religion, like political biases. So these are very sensitive issues. I don't know how do you fit in with the SDG goals concepts, because it's there. If you talk of quality education, if you talk of democratization of the process, so democratization has to be there. And also, I was wondering the community involvement of the students. That has been already talked about. Now, Dublin issue, we have seen that university project. In Bangladesh, if you look into the community, we don't know what is our community. Few universities have done the research to find out the community level. What is their income level? What is their occupation source? Where they go? Because if you want to send student delegation in the Islam areas for education or for literacy, they will say they have to swap their time for earning their living to go to the classes. So it is a question choice of economy versus education. Which one you are going to support? So if you are talking about MCO goals, if you are trying to take up a project, you must create some substitute for missed job opportunity or work opportunity of the adolescents or the boys and girls, only to bring them back to the classroom. This has to be detailed. Our society is going through an upheaval, as it has already been mentioned by Gen Z movement or Alpha movement. And this is a critical question that Dr. Farhat has come up with, because maximum rich people are the baby boomers, because they were who were born in the 40s after the Second World War. And what about now? What is the future we are going to create? Are we going to reshape? I remember there was a time that immigration and migration, it has become another big issue, whether we are taking into consideration in the context of SDG goals. 25 years ago, when I used to teach IBA, because basically I'm a sociologist, I could foresee the population scenario. And I could see that in economics, you see that land, labor, capital. So if it is a free economy, you should allow free movement of land, labor, and capital. So why not only capital and labor, not the workers? If you allow that, only then you can call yourself as a free economy. That issue has to be, because this is a digital divide, digital economic divide, which is putting us in a backward situation. If we want to go and globalize, then I wrote in one paper The globalization is welcome if it is for people, not for exploitation. And if you have a exploitation context, just what we see in the current economic situation through trade, tariff, and others, you are putting us in a disadvantaged situation. Where is the equality? Where is the inclusion? Where is the SDG goal we are supporting? So this advocacy has to come from the North-South dialogue or the South-South dialogue. We have to talk about these issues very eloquently. Otherwise, these are all big, what I call lip service, not the real contribution to the academic and educational achievement that we are trying to bring in the context of this planet. So environment is another issue, and Dr. Misbah has already rightly pointed out. He has completely given a list. And as a management teacher, my suggestion is that we have to chart out which particular SDG goals we would like to contribute into. Not everything for everyone. In that case, nothing will be there. In that case, we can specialize particular SDG goals and other universities can take up others. So we have to create a kind of platform where we can share, divide, and isolate the specific goals that will chart it out for us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What you have mentioned is that the universities can create values through discussion, internal discussion, by creating support to the teachers, students, and the stakeholders, and also by creating new knowledge. And you have also mentioned a very important thing, that merit-based admission and also recruitment of students and teachers. And the most interesting part with what you have began the discussion, that know thyself, know the community first, not before creating awareness and all. You know about your community, your society, and your country. Where are we right now? Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to open the floor for the participants. If there are any question to the panelists on the stage. You raise your hand and the microphone will reach you shortly. Is there any question? No. Okay. So the Magna Carta, this research project, it started with 2 questions, and which are very interesting questions, that the academia should question themselves, what are we good at and what are we good for? Good at and good for question. It is an empirical observation that a number of developments in higher education worldwide point towards a change in our understanding of the mission of higher education, and increasing emphasis on good for question. We have to also find out where we are good at. And from the discussion, as we have came to know that in which SDGs we are good at. Not all the universities will work on all the 17 SDGs. We have to know ourselves that where we are, where we stand, and which SDGs we should work on to attend, to make a better Bangladesh and to make a better future for the world. So for Bangladesh and the wider world, this alignment with the sustainability, community engagement, and values, it is not optional. It has become essential. Universities here, local and globally, we should ask, how do we uphold autonomy and freedom while being accountable to the society? How do we foster inclusivity while respecting the diverse context? And how do we lead the sustainability, the SDGs, and the other issues of the community? So with these 3 questions to the audience, we would like to close this panel discussion session for today. Thank you for hearing us, and thank you to the panel discussant. Now, I would request the panel discussant to kindly remain on the stage, and I would request our Honorable Dr. Carmen Lamagna to kindly come on the stage, and Dr. Professor Anursan Sir to kindly hand over the souvenir and the memento to our esteemed panelist.
No, she the moderator. What ideas you should follow? No. We said a comprehensively so far. I'm not contextual issue. Can you sir? Another place. He's very. Many meetings are going over there, so I'm missing some.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this wonderful session. Now we move to lunch. Our lunch will be served at 10th floor of this building. The lift is pointed to the right side. You can take this side or this side, and please join us for lunch. Thank you. Thank you, sir.